Welcome back once more. This is Inside Politics here on KTN News. A big week for the Senate, but a fresh row has hit the revenue-sharing formula debate as one faction has failed to name its 5-member team to the mediation committee. The team opposed to the Finance Committee formula has, however, coined another proposal to include in the Sakaja proposal in what they argue will be a win-win situation for the counties. But, as KTN political reporter Jeff Kirui now tells us, proponents of the one-man, one-vote, one shilling formula have threatened to end the mediation and have it squared out through a vote at the floor of the House.
The search for a solution to end the revenue-sharing formula to counties has hit a snag as one faction failed to name its 5-member team to the mediation table.
One side that supports the formula provided the names. So I've been waiting for the names from the other side. They told me they were working on them. As we speak, the names have not come.
The group in support of the formula by the Senate Finance Committee, which basically roots for the one-man, one-vote, one shilling, has already named its mediation team. But the side opposed to it has tasked Nairobi Senator Johnson Sakaja and his Meru counterpart Mithika Linturi to merge their proposals as a final document to be submitted to the technical team amidst protest from the supporters of the proposed third-generation formula.
Our position was represented by Senator Sakaja's. Linturi has come with a variation. We are in agreement with that variation. Now we've told both of them, go and ban the midnight oil, consult also other senators, also listen to what the speaker will say, and let's find a solution on Monday.
Watu wameitwa kamati, wakakataa Margaret Kamar kama chairperson. Wakati wamesikia ni Ken Lusaka ambaye pia ni speaker wetu, hawajapatiana majina yao. So kuna vile wengine wanataka huu mgogoro uendelee kwa sababu wanajifaidi wao wenyewe kifedha na kisiasa.
So Kenyans, you can clearly see there is no good faith. Yes. In fact, I dare say the same group when Senator Orengo and Wetangula last week said let us adjourn so we can come up with a consensus, they rejected it.
Instead of fronting its 5-member team to broker a truce, senators caucused under Team Kenya have fronted new proposals in what they argue will harmonize the shareable revenue and reduce the margins between gaining and losing counties.
We have agreed to negotiate the best to be between 250 and 270 billion. And once we agree on that figure, then whatever will be over and above, up to the 316 that is already passed in the division of revenue, will be loaded to Senator Sakaja's proposal as it is on the part of component B.
Those are strange documents. The only amendment that is in the floor of the House amendment like the Nairobi Senator amendment. Any other amendments are being discussed in Chai and Mandazi session. It is not in the House.
The mediation team was expected to hit the ball rolling and submit recommendations to be subjected to a debate through a Kamukunzi on Monday before the Tuesday vote. Jeff Kirui, KTN News.
So the standoff, as far as we can tell, continues inside the Senate. The divide persists, but we understand, the KTN political desk understands that there is a meeting today in the outskirts of Nairobi by both sides of the political divide to try and hammer out a deal. They're trying to make sure they have something they can tell Kenyans come Tuesday next week. Let me begin with you, Mark Bichachi. It's this debate about the one-man, one-vote, one formula versus win-win seems to be now the thing. What gives here?
Ben, there are two things here. First of all, like I said last week, there is no formula here that is not based on actual solid logic. Number one, the majority, getting majority of the money is logical. Why? Because if you look at the instance of healthcare, for example, a place that has a higher population definitely needs more doctors, definitely needs more hospitals. So that makes sense. But at the same time, you cannot ignore that a lot of our ASA regions and the sparsely populated regions of our country do need our support to build the infrastructure that is needed. They do need our support to build the economy that is needed. And they do need our support basically to come into the same standard of life as we would want, because our constitution does envision equity between our counties. So this is not an issue of either side being right and wrong. And this then brings me to my second point. My second point is there's been a lot of grandstanding and showmanship in this particular debate. What do I mean by grandstanding? That those who want to win political points by seeing that they have the power to either stall or push this particular agenda forward. So you find the stalwarts on either side sticking to their guns simply because they want to one-up the other side. Then you have the people who are looking at political gains and seeming to propagate their political careers simply by standing their ground on this particular issue. Then you've got the rumors and innuendo around the fact that a lot of senators, this has become an economic venture for them, and the longer it drags out, then the more their suppliers of cash will continue to give them money. So it is a mixture of things. And then, of course, this comes right after there was a change in the Senate leadership. And then, of course, for Murkomen, this is a very good chance to show that he was a better leader than Mitheka and Fogisio are currently able to be. So this is the reality that we are facing. Now, personally, I think that there should be no such term as a losing county or a gaining county. That makes no sense, absolutely. There should be no county that is being left behind, and we need to find a formula that works for the country. That said, we also need to be very alive to the fact that we cannot have a per capita distribution of devolution funds where one person gets 300,000 in a county, and then in another county a person gets less than 3,000 shillings per capita. It does not make sense. So there needs to be a balance, and that balance needs to be reached quickly, and the only way it can be reached is if the egos so involved could come down and do what is best for the country.
All right. Chero, while you are away, the Senate continued to fail to give Kenyans a formula for sharing, the 316 billion shillings among the 47 counties. What formula do you think the country should adopt, and what solution is there for the Senate in trying to get some consensus on this?
Okay, thanks, Ben. Actually, because I was in isolation, I had the opportunity to watch all these Senate proceedings when, of course, I wasn't resting or feeling unwell. And I remember thinking to myself that this feels like I'm tuning into another episode on a never-ending Afro cinema here in Kenya. It's a very expensive production because we, the taxpayers, pay for it. You know what? The Constitution of Kenya 2010 and all the discussions leading up to it talk about the equity that should be present for all Kenyans, not Sessional Paper 10 of 1965. So I, instead of sitting here because I'm not an economist and I'm not deeply steeped in the expertise behind that, I stand for equity. And I do not believe that there should be a single county that loses out. And there shouldn't be the impression that one is gaining over the other. The fallacy as well, some of the misinformation we were fed, that the only winners in this so-called one man, one shilling was Central Kenya. Of course not. There were many beneficiaries, beneficiary counties spread across the board. But ultimately for me, so long as the principles of equity are not enshrined, you will always have an impasse. And those who would use it to leverage politically for themselves will do it. And we are seeing that already. But that said, from county number 1 to 47, tell me where you haven't had an accountability issue. Fiduciary concerns across the 47 counties have made it that no matter what formula is developed, is implemented, is accepted, and so on and so forth, we will have a situation where we will still not have running water, electricity, adequate roads, the infrastructure required to develop those counties appropriately. But I was also thinking about Marsabit, because I think about Marsabit a lot in light of my energy justice work. 150,000 acres, Lake Turkana wind power, taken from the Lysamis community, no adequate compensation. Billions of shillings, way-leave compensation that would accrue to residents of Marsabit. So if we are talking here about the potential of counties to generate also their own revenue, why are resources siphoned systematically, especially from the north, down to a black hole somewhere, and we never see things going back? And then you turn around and argue and say Marsabit is sparsely populated or Turkana is sparsely populated. Wajir, Mandera, and so on, and Lamu. And Lamu, you have berths that are being built there, port berths. Let me see how the people of Lamu will actually benefit from that. So ultimately, for me, so long as we don't have an allocation system that is linked to an accountability process where there are consequences for theft of public resources, we can fight around formulas until kingdom come, politicize it, weaponize it, use it to consolidate alliances. In fact, the biggest winner, I believe, from the battles the past few weeks has been the William Ruto camp, because you can now see this emergence of a Young Turks Reloaded, where you have these politicians who have come and they call themselves Team Wa Kenya. Kwani, whose team were they on before? Many of them have been in parliament, have been in the Senate, have been in leadership for many, many years, young though they might be. And they are now waking up suddenly with massive pronouncements about how they are here for Kenyans and they support Kenyans. You must be utterly suspicious of each and every person, unless you know a senator or a parliamentarian that doesn't have a dirty file on him or her, who has not received a brown envelope one way or another. You cannot tell me that their intentions are ultimately altruistic in support of the people of Kenya. So I support equity. I want every county to have access to an opportunity to develop. But I can say that till the cows come home, so long as we don't have accountability.
All right, so equity, not equality. Let me come to you, Kipchumba. When you speak to either side of this divide on this issue, they are able to prove how their argument, is better for this country. How does the Senate get around this to be able to agree on one formula so that the country can move forward?
I think, Ben, we have missed the mark and the point in terms of arguing about equitable development in this country. And that is the language and the terms used by Article 201 and 203 of our Constitution. But again, you ask yourself this: when we sit down and develop these formulas, do we develop these formulas because we want equality or equity? Because in terms of development, we talk about equitable development. In terms of personal rights, we talk about equality. When you bring the term equality to development, it means that there are some variables which must be constant, and that cannot be achieved with our current model, economic model. So therefore, what we need to ask ourselves is this: the Senate must realize that both land mass and population and other factors, because look at it this way, we talk about population as though people in themselves generate revenue. They don't. When they harness factors of production, that is how we generate revenue. And after generating revenue, taxes come as a byproduct of revenue generated. Therefore, when you have this discussion and you do not factor in people like the Mombasa people who have a port, which is a key installation in this country, the Maasai people who have Masai Mara, which is a key installation in this country, the Turkanas who have their oil, which is a key thing that makes this country and stabilizes our dollar shilling economics. Therefore, we must have a discussion that is informed by variables, not political brinkmanship. And then again, the other thing, Ben, I think senators are mixing politics and economic variables. Those who have gubernatorial dreams are bringing their dreams before the other factors of the country. Because if you want to be a governor in a given county, don't fight for the money as though the money is going to your account. Fight for the money with the thinking that after this debate, Kenya cannot collapse because of the third generation formula. Kenya has withstood more dangerous things than whatever we are discussing. And therefore, we also need maturity in both the Senate leadership and the senators themselves. They must look at this discussion as a discussion that we are discussing 15% of our revenue as a country. They cannot look at it as though the 316 billion is the entire money going to counties. We have money from national government.
Okay.
And then now when it comes to this, we lose the point when we introduce the names of politicians in the debate. We introduced William Ruto, Raila Odinga, BBI. The debate is gone. And it must be remembered that we are here because Irungu Kangata brought a variable that was not in the 10 variables by CRA. The variable that if this does not happen, BBI collapses. So I think It is time we vouch for the sobriety of our senators. It is time we vouch for them to look at Kenya as a country that must continue. And then again, now that we are nearing an election, this revenue sharing formula should not ignite the tribal emotions and the 41 against 1 emotion. Let us sustain a civil discussion that will leave each Kenya feeling.
Okay. Thank you, Kipchumba, for that. I don't know where you are. You seem to like you're walking or something. But this must, in 1 minute only, so that we can move on to something very quickly. Do you think political brinkmanship is coming in the way of sobriety and public interest in this debate inside the House, the Senate?
And that is the disaster we face. The senators in the House are approaching this conversation with 2022 in mind, and that is unacceptable because they're looking at their selfish interests and they're pursuing county agenda at the national agenda. Right. And it's important to give an example so that all of us are on the same page. When you look at Kisii Teaching and Referral Hospital, Governor Ngwai has been able to put up amazing healthcare facilities. He's now got an hospital with about 900 beds. Is able to supply oxygen to the neighbors. He's coming up with a cancer facility. He has come up with a model hospital in Kisii. Now, if you embrace the principles of equity and equality, then we need to have these models.
All right, technical hitches there, the challenges of having these virtual discussions, but we'll get back to that. Let's move on to something else. About 150 former members of parliament might soon be earning 100,000 shillings per month for life if the president, Uhuru Kenyatta, assents to a bill passed by the August House. The National Assembly has passed the Parliamentary Pensions Amendment Bill to increase the monthly pension to 100,000 shillings for MPs who served between 1983 to 2001, which will be backdated to the 1st of July 2010. However, some members expressed their concerns that the move will cause serious strain to the exchequer and also incite other sectors among civil servants, as KTN senior political reporter Duncan Haimba now explains.
This bill is very timely, and I want to inform our leader of the majority, get to His Excellency the President, let him assent to this yesterday. We need this. Our people are suffering.
Going to alleviate problems that we've seen our former colleagues are facing. Mr. Speaker, if you look at the age bracket of the members, the former members of Parliament, this bill is targeting, Mr. Speaker, these are people who are in dire need of assistance, Mr. Speaker. Some of them are of old age, Mr. Speaker. They are above 70, 80 years, Mr. Speaker. And some of them, one or two, I attended their burial, Mr. Speaker. They were really in dire need of help, Mr. Speaker, and they were buried as destitutes, Mr. Speaker. But having said, Mr. Speaker, I want to agree with the former majority leader that it might spiral in other parts of the civil service.
It's already, the House has already made a decision that it's in the best interest to have this bill passed this way. So I also want to say that perhaps we should not be second-guessing the actions of the president. That's tantamount to actually discussing the president in this House, that he's likely to act in this manner or not. Let's cross that bridge when we get there. And if there is anyone who should be bringing that information, it should be me, not any other person. So Mr. Speaker, let's be fair to the members who served in this parliament. They are pensionable in the first instance. I think that's one thing. They are already on a pension. So we are not giving them a pension. But the only thing we are doing is bringing that pension of the 6,000 to what is its present value today, if one was to look at the current, the best terminology. That somebody who was entitled to 6,000 in 20 years ago, what is the current value of that 6,000? Right, today, so that they can at least, we can try to cushion them against the vagaries of inflation plus all those things, because they serve this country with honor. They serve this country with dignity. It will be unfortunate for us to let them now go out in dignity. And this is something we need to look at not just for members of parliament, but even from the sports people, from all those people that we see suffering after bringing honors and glory to this country, but we abandon them at their hour of need.
All right, very well explained there by the Leader of Majority in the Kenyan and in the National Assembly, Amos Kimunya. Do you agree with that, Dismas Mokua? 100,000 shillings per month for life.
I mean, the behavior of the National Assembly last week confirms that they're interested in their own selfish interest. They do not care about the needs of Wanjiko, or Mara, or Wakesho. We know that members of the National Assembly in Kenya and the Senate are some of the highest paid public servants globally. So now, when they're serving, they take home a fat check, and then they want the Wananchi to take care of them for all the remaining years they have in life. So one begins to wonder, what are we supposed to be doing to these members of the National Assembly? We're supposed to be coming up with their salaries. Right now, they're well paid. They earn a lot of money. And when they leave the National Assembly, they still want us to take care of them. Why can't they engage in investments like any other Kenyan so that when they leave the National Assembly, they've got money to run on? So for me, I think this is unacceptable. It's bad manners. It's uncalled. And President Kenyatta must reject that bill, and he shouldn't sign it into law. And if he must sign it into law, then we must give them money which approximates what Wanjiku needs. Maybe you give them 15,000 or 10,000 or 20,000. We cannot afford to treat them like royalty while they're serving. They take all the money, and you know they're associated and there are allegations of corruption. And then when they leave office, you still want to give them 100,000. And then at this point, one has to congratulate Adan Duale. He came up with a voice of reason. He said, if you allow members of parliament to go with this pension, what happens to teachers? What happens to medical doctors? What happens to principal secretaries, governors? Every public servant would say, I now want to be given a pension. So before you know, up to 90% of the revenues generated in Kenya will be taking care of public servants who are either working or as pensioners.
Very quick, let me get your quick reactions.
Really, this is unacceptable.
Let me get your quick reactions on this issue very quickly. 1 minute only. Should members of parliament not pensionable?
They should be pensionable if they'd been contributing to a pension prior, and the money that they're getting must be consistent with what other Kenyans earn. We cannot afford to be giving them a fortune after office if they did not even contribute a cent while they were at work.
Thank you, Dismas. Kipchumba, can you hear me? If you can hear me, what's your take on this issue? 100,000 shillings for former MPs.
Ben, I think we must realize that members of parliament are working like any other Kenyan who has been employed. And therefore, it is their right to have a pension. And look at it this way, Ben. Today, if you wake up at your house, wherever you live, you will not find anybody waiting for you at your doorstep with a problem. But if you are to go to a member of parliament, a county assembly, a senator, a women rep, you will find a multitude of Kenyans there with all manner of problems. Now, when you say these people earn a big check, yes, they do earn, but a half or 3/4 of that money ends up in the pockets of Kenyans because our people are poor and our people expect money from politicians. So if we are real in this discussion, we must have an objective discussion. The issue for me should be that 100,000 might not be sustainable, but yes, they need a pension. The other thing is this, we need to ask ourselves, the money they contribute to their kitty, how do they invest in it so that they can use the money that is recouped from their investment to make sure that they are paid something? The other thing, Ben, is this. If you look at most of the former members of parliament, they live in squalor, they are poor, they are living a life you might not want. Is that the message you want to send to future generations, that the people who organize this society left with nothing? We should have a way of appreciating them, whether giving them lump sum or giving them pension. But the thing is this, let us have an honest debate, knowing that members of parliament are Kenyans, they work for this country, they serve this country in very difficult conditions. The issue that they handle more money has been captured by this mass is neither here nor there. How much money do the CEOs of our top corporations earn in this country? They earn in millions. I was seeing the other day one of the CEOs in this country who earned 140 million per year. Do we say much about them? No. The question is, whereas politicians are our servants, let's give them something commensurate to the work they have done for this country.
Thank you, Kipchumba. Mark, let me get your quick reactions to this.
And there are two things. Number one, that every person who's worked in their life does deserve a pension. Now, the question is, how much pension is a fair pension? And number two, did they contribute while they were in parliament towards a pension scheme? If not, where is that money coming from? Number three, we also need to study what politicians get when they get into office. There's a car allowance, there's a mortgage allowance, so many benefits that cannot be mistaken and ignored when it comes to thinking about their pension. Lastly, we must consider in which times are we in for us to say that we want to give them backdated pension all the way to 2010. This is the time where we are facing the COVID pandemic. Money is tight, the economy is struggling. Is this the time really to say that we want to give former MPs their money? Now, I am not against people being given pensions. I'm not one who believes that every politician is evil and therefore does not deserve anything. But I think matter needs to be treated with the carefulness it deserves, with the recognition of the times and economic challenges we find ourselves in. Okay,
Chero, in 1 minute only, do you think they deserve 100,000 shillings per month for life?
Thank you, Ben. I actually went straight to the horse to ask the question because my mother was in Parliament during the time frame, not the entire time, but for one of the terms mentioned within that, 84 to 2001. And she is utterly horrified. It's not so much the principle, because I agree with Mark, pension should accrue to anyone who has worked. But there's the issue of taxation, and then there's also the issue of every other single Kenyan. Remember the structural adjustment that saw the firing of so many teachers, railway staff, and so on in 1997. Have they ever seen their emoluments? What about doctors? What about nurses? So she says this is obscene. It is obscene at this point in time in the history of Kenya. Is it that she, as a mid-70s-year-old person who has fought long and hard for freedom in this country, does not deserve a pension? No, she does. What is this all about, though? Ultimately, as she said, the eating class is not bothered by the tears and the cries of the poor. And so long as this does not bother us, so long as we are not concerned about the mama who was boiling stones at the coast so that her children could fall asleep thinking food was being prepared, so long as we are not concerned about the mother who did not even have an electricity connection in her home, who was electrocuted along with her 3-month-old baby on her back, walking back just before Eid, in Kwale. So long as we are not listening to the cries of those who are poor, everything we do is meaningless and vanity at that high level. And I would like at this point to even give credit to Peter Kenneth. He is one of those legislators who started to pay taxes. And after that, people started to pay their taxes. So this is obscene. This is a precursor to something else, maybe big payouts, lump sum for the current group. And we would also like to say those who are pushing now to see those between 1984 and 2001 receive a pension, they should not have any of these benefits accrue to them, or else what is their interest? And if you look at the emoluments right now, including some of these outrageous allowances, there was some woman rep somewhere, I think, who wanted 43 million shillings for fuel. When you begin to look at that, at what level of greed will this current sitting parliament determine its pension going forward? So this is unacceptable. This is horrifying when you still have families saying, I need 100 shillings to feed my family today. So my mother, Ambassador Tabitha Seyi, who was a member of parliament, says, this is not the time, this is not right, this is not commensurate, this is obscene.
A lot of people saying that members of parliament deserve to get pension, but it must be sustainable. And the big question is, where is this money going to come from? Let's take a quick commercial break here on Inside Politics. Don't go too far. When we come back, we shall be waiting to hear from you. Our studio lines will be scrolling at the bottom end of your screen. Be sure to give us a call with your views, questions, and comments on our discussions today.